With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight, in person, here in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, is my good friend, Matt. You're not wearing your beanie tonight, though. It's 70 degrees outside, but hey, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I am doing great. Who would have guessed in beginning of December here, and I just about need to put my shorts back on.
Yeah, man, it's been, the weather's not been a beautiful day, but hey, it's been a warm day, right? So what is today? December 6th?
December 6th, 2022. Hard to believe.
Yeah, this year's almost over. Kind of crazy, Matt. And this is episode, I believe, 48, 49 for the year. So we're just cruising right along here. This is kind of crazy.
It is crazy. Well, how you been,
Season
Mark?
3.
You been doing all right?
Yeah, I've been doing good, Matt. Doing good. Just I'm ready to record this show. I've been looking forward to this one. We've talked about getting this together for a couple of weeks, and I'm really excited about this one. So we're going to have a good time with this show. So, Matt, speaking of that, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
I would love to, Mark. We've got a packed house tonight. This might be our first 5-way recording here.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Let's waste no time getting right into it, because we have the founder, Steve Groth, and the master distillers, Ron and Jacob Call from Hemingway Whiskey with us tonight. Everybody, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. Now, Jacob has actually been a guest on the show before. He was a guest back on episode 64 back in April of 2021. So it's been about a year and a half. So yeah, Jacob, welcome back.
Yeah, you guys haven't changed a bit. Glad to be back.
That's right. Same bad jokes, same time.
Same bad jokes, same bad intro.
Yeah.
Same. Jacob, somebody told me the other day, I met them in person and they were talking about, I love listening to the show. It's really quirky. I'm like, quirky? Huh. Okay. I'm not sure I've ever heard my podcast described as quirky, but welcome back. Welcome back to the quirkiness, man. And we're happy to have you here. We're happy to have your dad, Ron, with us, and also Steve as well. So this is going to be a great show, and really excited to talk with you guys. We got the care package in the mail, so we got our sample, which is really cool. So if one of you guys, I guess Jacob, I don't know if you want to talk about what we have poured up that we're going to be drinking tonight and share with our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So this is our Hemingway Rye Whiskey Signature Series first release. It is a blend of 94% 95 rye whiskey from MGP, and also a blend of 6% of Green River produced rye whiskey that I happened to make several years ago. It's 4 years old. And then we sent that down to my father, and he worked his magic and finished it off with some rum-seasoned Oloroso sherry cask.
Okay, great. And this one comes in at, what's the 100 proof, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is batch 1. So this was actually, you guys just released this, but it was online. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. We did 972 bottles, and just got back from Florida a few weeks ago, went down and hand signed those with my dad and my brother.
Very nice. And you've already sold out. If the website was not lying to me today as I was looking at it, it looks like you've already sold all 900 plus bottles.
Yeah, there's more on the way. Don't worry.
Well, that first release, this first edition, I mean, it was really cool because it was a beautiful bottle. People can get online and check that out. But you guys did really cool bottle with a box as well, I think. Is that right? So it was like a collector's edition almost. Yeah,
I'll let Steve take over. Steve's kind of the genius behind the marketing side of things. So, Steve, you want to tell him a little bit about the package?
Yeah, I wish you wouldn't have said genius. That's I'm the guy that helped with the package. My background is in branding and marketing, and we wanted to do something that was very Hemingway-esque. If you look at the package, it's very minimalist. It's simple, but gets the point across, which is kind of the way Hemingway wrote and lived. And so we tried not to put too many bells and whistles on it, and just let the whiskey speak for itself. The typewriter keys that pop on the front were an idea that one of the team came up with, and the Hemingway family loved. But at the end of the day, it was intended to be a very simple package that's where you could see the liquid, but got a feel that this was a kind of a brand that Hemingway would actually, a bottle that he would pick up and drink himself. And then the book was kind of a cool, we were thinking about how we were going to ship it, how we were going to make it collectible, and how it would end up on somebody's back bar. And then the book made sense. And then there was a tie back to Prohibition, where people used to hide their bottles in their books. And so, a lot of this just came together with a really talented team. So that's how it came together. And you can visualize these books as we do special releases on the back bar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. And I'm sorry that I missed out on that release. Somebody was telling me about it the other day because I was mentioning having you guys on the show, and they're like, "Oh, did you get that release?" I'm like, "No, man, I didn't get the press release about the release. I didn't know about it." So I did miss out on that one, but I was looking online today. And I've actually had several different people, as a matter of fact, that I've talked to about having you guys on the show. And the first thing they say is like, "Have you had that Hemingway Rye yet?" I'm like, "No, I got the sample bottle, but I haven't cracked it." And they're like, "Oh my God, it is amazing." So you guys have already had several people that I truly respect in the industry that have sampled this and tasted it, and they have given it high marks. So I still haven't tasted it yet. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But Matt, before we do that, let's talk about the nose, man. What are you picking up in terms of the nose on this one?
The nose is really bright. You get a nice fruity, like rye flavors right on the start of the nose. It's got like a really luscious kind of red fruit to it. Then I'm picking up, it leads into some citrus, like orange or tangerine, a little bit of orange zest, and then that unmistakable to me, a graham cracker type aroma to it as well. And then there's like an herbal note too, like a little bit of coriander that I pick up on the nose as well. But really nice, really luscious, really, really bold and structured.
Yeah, I like that, the fruitiness you talked about, Matt, because that definitely comes through, just like a rich fruitiness, very sweet. But also you get a little bit of that rye that comes through well. But this is now, so Jacob, this is, it's rum. How do you describe it? Rum finished. Wait, go ahead and tell me what it was.
So it's finished in a rum finished Olorosa sherry barrel.
Okay, I gotcha. So you're gonna get nuances of all those that impact it. So not just the rye, but also some rum that's coming out of that barrel, but then also the Olorosa that was in the barrel too. So
yeah, that's right. It's pretty complex. Got a lot going on. A lot of different things happening for sure.
So in terms of else in the nose, because I always like to say, what did Matt get wrong? So what else would you throw in there on the nose, guys, that we didn't pick out?
Ron, why don't you jump in?
I don't know all those fancy words, but I get mostly the nice fruity notes, and
Yeah.
you do get some of the sweetness from the rum characteristics and the sherry itself that's actually saturated in the wood. But
Yeah.
outside of those nice fruity notes and the finish is quite rye to me, a little bit dry, but it's
Okay.
very typical rye finish.
Gotcha. Yeah, and Ron, don't worry about the fancy. I'm from Eastern Kentucky, so I let Matt, do all the fancy words,
Yeah.
and I just tell you that it's sweet or spicy or vanilla or caramel, and that's about the extent of my addition. So you're in
We'll get
perfect.
along good ends.
Ron, you and I, you're in good company here with me, Ron. So
All right.
so you don't have to worry about that. All right. So Steve, Jacob, you guys want to jump in on the nose on this one?
Well, Jacob, you might as well. I mean, out of the three, I told somebody earlier today, in this crowd, in terms of a sophisticated palate, I think I'm a solid like 6.2, possibly. So I'm going to leave it to the 9s, the 8s and 9s to really get into it. But what
There
we
you
were
go.
trying to do is really come up with something that was where the rye didn't disappear, where it didn't disappear in sweetness, so you could you could still taste the rye, but then you could pick up the nuanced notes around it. And that was really where my head was at when we were thinking about a blend and a finish.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Jacob?
and for me, I agree with your assessment. I get a lot of baking spices from it. Some of that comes from the rye itself, that spice that you generally get, and I think the overall sweetness and the baking spices probably what would stand out to
Yeah.
me.
And I love the color on it because Jacob, you just held your glass up, to the camera, and I've got mine up here. Steve just took a drink, and it's just the color on this is absolutely beautiful. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So, what's in terms of the age on this one? I think it may say on the sample bottle, but is it 9 and 4? Is that right? Or
Yeah, so it's a blend of 9-year-old and then a blend of 4-year-old.
okay,
Majority of
gotcha.
it's 9-year-old, but we thought it would be if I'm going to be involved, we wanted to have something that I had my hand in too.
Yeah.
6% of the 95% rye that I had made previously. So
Okay, gotcha. So, guys, let's kind of jump back a little bit and talk about who you are. Jacob, you've been on the show before, but it was a year and a half ago. So, just take a few moments, if you would, and kind of share with everybody your background and how you got into the industry, so everybody knows.
sure, yeah. So I'm 8th generation Kentuckian, 8th generation distiller. Our first was a guy named Samuel Call. Came to Bourbon County, Kentucky in 1791. And then fast forward to more modern times, my grandfather worked at Jim Beam. My dad worked at Jim Beam. And then we moved to Florida in the 90s, and I'll let my dad kind of get into his background, but he was recruited away down there. I went to school there, came back, went to Murray State, and had a little side career for a while as a banker. Don't let everybody know that, but a banker for a while. And then I really just, always wanted to kind of get into the business. Kind of grew up around it, being from Kentucky. And my dad made sure I had all the really challenging jobs when I was a kid, working in bottling or in processing in the tanks and different things. But really got to get back in the business full time with him down in Florida. Worked there for several years, had a wide variety of jobs from purchasing to running distilleries and different things. And then that company was sold, and my dad had kind of semi-retired and joined up with Steve. And I knew a guy named Earl Hewlett who had bought the old Charles Medley distillery down in Owensboro. And that place was, man, it was in bad shape. It was shut down for over 25 years. So my dad and I, we came up and looked at it, and I guess I was the only one crazy enough to say yes to rebuild that place. And we did, and expanded several times, and ended up going by the name of the Green River Distillery, and that facility was recently sold back in July. So I decided to go my own way after the sale, and right now I'm in the process of building my own distillery.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that probably in the next round or maybe the third round, but we definitely want to jump in and talk about that for sure. Steve, tell us about your background and because you've got a really interesting background as well. So I'm really curious to have you share that with our listeners.
I'll try to abbreviate it, so I won't go back to the paper route. I like to, after I get done with my background, I usually tell people the common theme is that I'm just fundamentally unemployable, and so that's the common theme. So I've always actually started out in finance, and I like to tell people I'm a recovering CPA. I did that for Deloitte years and years ago, and I started their entertainment division 40 years ago, and then moved out of that into went to work with one of my clients and became partner in a live entertainment business, which ended up being the largest live entertainment group in the U.S. We built 15 amphitheaters, owned 75 clubs, did 1,500 tours a year. And then packaged it all up eventually and sold it to Live Nation. So it was the biggest chunk of Live Nation. And the story was on that is that my partner and I, who was really my boss, I coattailed him into the entertainment business. He was a legend, started promoting Chubby Checkers in like the 60s. And so he was at the epicenter of entertainment. And we put together the plan to consolidate up all these concert promoters and ticketing companies, and got to the 11th hour and said, you know what, I'd rather be a seller than a buyer. And so we just said, that sounds like a den of thieves, so let's just let those guys do that. But in the meantime, I was in that business, and so as owning all the clubs, owning all the amphitheaters, and then I think at the time I was the only one that owned a business suit in the concert promotion business. So I was in between every deal, between every spirits company, every soft drink company, and so I got into marketing, and then as I said, so that was on that side. So I was a big buyer of alcohol. I've always been a consumer of alcohol, but and then built marketing programs for them, and then sold that business and launched and moved actually to Eastern Europe after the wall fell, and lived in Warsaw, and built out a television network in Eastern Europe, and it was anchored by music television and clubs, and sold it to Viacom, MTV. Then after that, I sold that, came back to U.S. and got together with a guy that I knew from the entertainment business that had a music marketing business, and we began consolidating and buying marketing and advertising companies. So, digital advertising, sports, entertainment marketing, music marketing, retail, and so on, and all around the world. And so we bought 40 businesses in U.S., Europe, Asia, Latin America, 700 clients, worked for just about every spirits, beer, soft drink company. It's just, it was that kind of a business, and that lent itself to those kind of activities. And sold it to a company called Omnicom, grew it to about $1 billion revenue business. Wow. And anyway, when I was done and throwing cards in a hat and pretty much decompressing from being on the road with rock bands and being all over the world for years and years, I got together with a partner of mine who is a world-class creative, cover of Forbes. I knew him from the ad business. And we really started working on building brands that were anchored by craftsmen. That was really what we geeked out on, because we both had lives, we both had built businesses, so we really wanted to do stuff that we loved. And at the epicenter of the things that we did, we actually helped build an advertising agency that only worked on American craftsman brands. And so we sort of poked around in different places and just found things that we liked. And the spirits business was one that was interesting, particularly the dark spirits in the whiskey sort of rum business, because of the age, the stories, the folklore, the people, the personalities. And it had that really cool, gooey epicenter for us, which was these unsung heroes of craftsmen that were sort of hid, behind everything. They never were out front. They never were the rock stars. They never participated in the businesses. And we did a few deals, worked on a couple of things, but the one that we really locked into was the Angel's Envy business when we got together with that. So Lincoln was retired, working consulting with Suntory. Lincoln and Wes were poking around on a few deals. I had another friend who was a friend of Lincoln and Wes's, and he was the perfect candidate for us to work with, because he was that guy, right? He had been
right.
He just kind of pensioned off into Lexington, and I'm like, what are you doing? Let's go. Let's go make something. Let's go do something. And he says, I'm kind of retired, and I got some health issues, and essentially we said, listen, how about if I build you a distillery and put you in business with your son and your grandson, and let's just see how far this goes, and let's try and make stuff that's fun, and so that's where it started, and we had, we did a lot of work because of our backgrounds in branding and so on. So we had seen that at the times, whiskey and bourbon were starting to make a move. There was people entering the category. There was a lot of things that people were looking for to enter it. It was, at the time, it was square bottle, harsh finish, dead guy's name on the front kind of stuff, right? And so that's how we evolved. And my creative partner on one side, Alex Boguski, and then Lincoln, and on the other side, who's the creation partner, kind of melded this brand image with this product that was, at the time, heresy, which was finished, whiskey. And
Sure, yeah.
Anyway.
Whiskey finished in rum, right?
Yeah, so that's how I get into that business, and it was essentially at the time going to be a one and done, cool team effort, and kind of eventually became a runaway train. And then in the middle of it, the Hemingway family came to me and said, hey, listen, we like what you guys have done there at Angel's Envy. We want to do something to give money to conservation and literacy charities that would be befitting of my, at the time, the guy's, Patrick Hemingway's father's legacy, his only living son. And so that's how we kind of got into Angel's Envy. That's how we sort of migrated into the Hemingway program, and that's where I met Ron along the way. We became best buddies. Guys in the Call family, anchored by Jacob and Ron and Clayton. They have, again, if you just think about the common theme of the stuff that geeks me out, whether anybody else likes it or not, maybe that's secondary, but I just love these family history stories to be able to tell, bring to life, and so that's how these things kind of evolved. And those guys are the rock stars. I'm just, trying to pull things together and bring them to life and, make them famous.
Yeah, that's very cool. Ron, how about you? Can you tell us about your background and how you got into the industry?
I told you you'd get more than you asked for.
No, that's great. No, we appreciate that, Steve. That's an awesome story, man. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Well, I got into business in 1974 at Jim Beam, and back then, a lot of the management was Seagram folks, so you normally started out in the lab, and I worked my way up from working back then they called them lab rats. So I was a lab rat working my way up to manager, and I got to work with Booker and Don Calhoun. Don Calhoun, he was the bottling manager, and he gave me a lot of opportunities, and Booker gave me a lot of opportunities too for running the distillery at night shift, making yeast, And you from being in the lab, you know what all the numbers mean. So you look at the numbers, and you pretty well know what the product's going to be, and from start to ending. We had top quality gas chromatography, so you can do all your chemical analysis along with your organoleptic evaluation. So I was there 16 years, and my dad worked there. My dad left right when I started. I don't know if that was good or bad. Anyway, he left. He retired. And then I started. I got recruited out of Beam, and I got involved with cruising rum, which I believe Steve was involved in cruising somewhere in the back, which I didn't know till recently. And then the company got bought 5 times, and I kept getting promoted 5 times. And I went from being VP of quality all the way up to distiller to director of cruising production North America. Got to work with V&S, traveled to Sweden, their facilities in St. Croix. And like I say, I went through like 5 ownerships and wound up kind of retired. You know how things happen sometime when you reach a certain age. So I retired. And then I met Steve, and we hit it off good. And, with my background, I think we kind of had some good synergy there. And, the product is doing great, and I know the rye is going to be great. But you guys with those fancy words, that only thing I always say, I make a damn good product. So that's my byline. So.
Well, that's great, Ron, and we're happy to have you with us, and thanks for sharing your story as well. That's a lot of fun. So, guys, I tell you what, we're at the end of round 1, and that's what I wanted to do, was get the information from all you guys, who you were, what your backgrounds were, how you got in the industry. So let's just take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and then we'll come back with round 2, and we'll have more with all the guys, Steve and Jacob and Ron from Hemingway Whiskey Company, in just a minute.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3 Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsofFrenchlick.com to learn more information, and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me still in person, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there?
Mark, I'm great. Always good to be back in the Bourbon Life Studios, also known as your basement.
That's right. I noticed you turned the fireplace on, man. You're like toasty out. You're like it's 70 degrees outside. I'm not going to need the fire. And I noticed, I can see in the background, I see the fire going now.
It is on. It is on, nice and toasty.
Yeah. My wife keeps it like 62 degrees in this house, man. So you've got to bundle up when you come visit.
No doubt about it.
Oh, but hey, we got some great stuff poured up to keep us warm. So you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. Let's get right back to it, because I think you and I are the least interesting people on this podcast. So let's get the talent.
I would agree with that 150%, Matt.
Absolutely. Let's get the talent back on here. We have the founder and master distillers of Hemingway Whiskey Company, Steve Groth, Jacob, and Ron Call with us. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, we're very excited to have you guys on the show. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. Glad we were able to get this set up. And Jacob, glad to have you back on. Like I said earlier, Jacob was a previous guest on the show back on episode 64, back when we did a show with him. And I'm trying to think of, we did a couple different things on that show. We did Yellow Banks, I believe. We drank some of that.
I think so.
I think we did Bradshaw bourbon. We did all the products, things you had there at from Green River, right? So that was a good show for sure. So Matt, we're going to jump in on this second round, and we've got the same thing poured up. This is the Hemingway Rye. This is the first edition of the Hemingway Rye, and Jacob explained what that is in our first round. So we still have that. We still have that poured up. It is the first expression from the Hemingway Whiskey Company. So Matt, you want to jump right into the palate on this one?
I'd love to. It's got the nice zesty citrus right up front. I pick up a lot of orange zest, really nice bright rye spice coming through, peppercorn, baking spice right after that sweetness and the zestiness. You get the heat that comes through on it. And then it's got a really nice dark, bold flavor, like tastes to me kind of like fig or dates, like a nice sweet dark fruit after that, but really, really delicious, nice and oily, good coating on the mouth, and drinks really well.
Yeah, for 100 proof, I mean, this drinks like, to me, I think it drinks a little warmer than 100 proof, which is nice. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Matt. But yeah, I definitely get that. There's some spiciness to it. Ron, I'm gonna go with your lingo. It's spicy. So that's about as good as you'll get from me. It's spicy. Maybe some cinnamon coming through on that one. Almost like a little bit of sweetness too, kind of like a cinnamon red hot. Those Brock's candies when I was a little kid, those cinnamon discs. Kind of get that on the palate and the finish. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice that fruitiness comes through as well. I think, Matt, I'm picking some of that up that we talked about earlier as well. So guys, what else did we miss in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
I think y'all did a good job describing it.
Hey, well, thank you. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's definitely got mouthfeel. It's sweet and spicy all at the same time, which I really enjoy. You know, even in bourbon and rye. You know, if you can make it taste like Christmas in a bottle, I think that's normally a winner for me. So sweet and spicy.
What we noticed too with this product, if you drop a cube of ice in that, it dramatically changes it.
Okay.
Product, but it's very nice.
Yeah. So I'm curious because you guys had 900 and some odd bottles with this. I wonder how many people are actually opening their bottles because
that's a great. You know, the thing is that we sold these things and it was bittersweet because we had like the team, which is our Kentucky team, and they're all excited about it. And they're like parents taking their kids to kindergarten for the first day, right? Hoping that people would like it. And then it's like, I wonder how many people are actually going to drink this. We might put a hitchhiker on this thing or something so that people can actually taste it without having to crack it.
I mean, most of the bottles that I pick up, I drink. I will crack them open and drink them. But then there's some things that you're like, man, it's just such a unique design or such a unique bottle that you think, yeah, I think I might just save this one and just wait and see what happens. And it'll sit on the shelf for a couple of years before you even get to that point. So with the bottle and the design and the packaging, everything you guys did with this one, I'm kind of curious to know out of those 900 plus bottles, how many people actually said, yes, I'm going to open mine and drink it.
Well, we did plan a little bit for that because the next release will be the one that isn't signed. And okay. So therefore you can buy and drink as many as you like.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. So, now, we can talk a little bit about that. in terms of like a second release. Are you guys going to keep doing these finishes like this on this, Jacob? I'll throw that question to you, I think.
Yeah. So the next round, it's basically the same product, just not in the limited packaging.
Okay.
Not signed. So yeah.
Okay. So it'll be the same thing. And that was another question that kind of came up. I was thinking about this today as I was getting ready for the show, because you've got 94% that is Indiana Rye. That's 95.5. I'm assuming that probably comes from the place where most people think of when they think of Indiana Rye. And then you've also got 6%, which is the rye that you laid down at Green River. So as you move forward, is that still going to be the combination, or will you alter those percentages? Will you still have access? I got a lot of questions here.
Well, fortunately, I made a lot of rye whiskey for a lot of different people that might have barrels around. So that's good. There's plenty of rye that I've made floating around out there that we have been able to get our hands on. So that's good. And then, after we get through the super age stuff, as we run down some of that Indiana Rye, we'll get into more of an everyday type product down the road, I'm sure.
Okay.
But the idea is to transition the blend to, all the stuff that the calls are making.
Okay.
So the idea was to have like almost an homage to it, but it was a nice blend and it was a nice, combination. But we felt like it was important to have something in the bottle that we made, and then
Right.
and then evolve it. So that's the plan. And since since I exited Angel's Envy, I have been this bourbon hoarder of barrels. I just have like quietly I don't know. I mean, it was like at some point my wife was just like scratching her head and like, how many barrels of whiskey do we have? And so
You guys collect bottles. Steve collects barrels.
I was just going to say, hey, Steve, when you decide to have a Christmas or a holiday party, do me a favor, just let me know, and Matt will bring the drill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably last until February though.
So I'm just curious, Steve, with these barrels. I mean, are you warehousing those in Florida? Are you warehousing those just where they were from, or how does that work?
Where they're from? I didn't know. Kentucky mostly, and then some in Indiana.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's nice. You can keep
on
those.
On the rye samples that Steve has. We go through a strict sampling procedure.
Okay.
And, we do obtain dozens of samples to review and comment on, and then I give recommendations to Steve, and we move from there. And so far, we've been successful, and I'm sure this brand's going to be successful.
Okay.
Hey,
Well,
Ron,
hopefully all the barrels I made pass your QC test.
Really?
There's a couple I want to talk to you about, Jacob. But, no, there's not. They were all money.
I'm tougher on yours than Steve's. So.
Yeah, here's a question that Jacob, thanks for bringing that up, because I want to ask this question now. So what's it like? I'm going to preface this question by saying, last year we had Fred and Freddie No on the show, and it was fun to kind of see that dynamic and talk to them and talk to Freddie about working with his dad, but then also to talk to Fred, who had worked for his dad, Booker. And get the relationship that had existed there. So Jacob, working with your dad, Ron, working with your son, you guys want to talk a little bit about that dynamic and how that works?
Yeah, I mean,
Jacob's like, maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, working with my dad, it's great. He taught me everything I know. We rebuilt a historic distillery together, kept me from screwing anything up. I think that's what he used to like to tell people. I just came up here and make sure you didn't screw something up. So, no, I mean, everything in the business, I learned from him. So we got a great relationship. We talk about we talk about business a lot, but, we like to fish and hunt and do outdoorsy stuff too. So
Very nice. Now, so Jacob, you're here in Kentucky, is that right?
yeah.
All right. And
Yeah,
Ron, are you in Kentucky or are you in Florida?
I'm in Florida.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, what's it like getting to work with your son?
Yeah,
Let's hear your perspective on it.
That's why I let him answer first. No, it's a lot of fun, especially with that old distillery, Green River. I mean, it was a friggin' disaster. And I took my dad there years ago to look at it, and it was rough. And so when Jacob had that opportunity, it was a good opportunity, and it was a young man's game, in my opinion, because I didn't want it. And he listens most of the time, but he hadn't screwed up too much, so he does listen. The main thing is on the distillation columns, and we're big believers in copper in our stills, and that's what he's putting in Kentucky also. And we work well with Vendome and those folks, and plus we got the science background that goes in with the day to day, and like I say, he listens 99.9% of the time. So,
Well, now, and you guys are, it's like a whole family business here because Jacob, your brother, is involved too. Is that right?
Yeah. He's been a bourbon fan, probably listens to your all show, I'm sure. And, he owned his own business for a while and recently sold that. He was kind of like me. He had some of those challenging high school and college jobs working for my dad. So, he's kind of been chomping at the bit really to get full-fledged into the business. And this was just a great opportunity that Steve gave us, to all get to come work together as a family and come out with a really cool, unique product that's got a really good story behind it too.
Yeah.
The original brand started, the concept for the whiskey actually started from conversations I've had with Ernest Hemingway's only living son, Patrick, who's 94. And probably a decade ago, like every chance I get, I go to Bozeman and hang out with him and just listen. As you can tell, I like to tell stories, but with him, I just listen. And we talked about a whole bunch of different things, fun, hunting and fishing. He was a safari guide, a legend in his own right. But then he was talking about how his son, how his father and him they'd go hunting, and he would drink, in Wyoming and Africa, and they would always have a bottle of rye or bourbon with them. And so it's, he started asking me about will we consider it? And from the very beginning of our relationship, we created this Old Man in the Sea brand so that we could have different brands underneath that moniker. And but we were looking for the right story. It's been 10 years since we kind of have been building this thing, and it really is three different families. It's the Hemingway family, who's actively involved in our business, outdoors people. They love the brand. They're going to be very heavily involved in the whiskey. My family's involved. My kids, work in the business. So until there's some Hatfields and McCoys that goes on, I think we're so far we're okay.
So Steve, you and Ron knew each other. Obviously, I'm assuming you knew Jacob through Ron. So now you guys were doing a rum. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that was down in Florida, right?
Yeah. That was the original brand that we started out with when the Hemingways came to us and asked us if we would do something where they could give the money to conservation and literacy. So we started with the rum, but the rum actually, because we had the insights that we had around rum, was that it was going to kind of evolve and grow similar to American whiskey. And so our rum is sort of parallel past the sort of our whiskey path and a lot of the whiskey paths. In fact, Lincoln Henderson worked with Ron to create, Papas Pilar, the rum from the beginning. And so He was at the epicenter of it. And so we finish our rums in whiskey barrels, bourbon and then sherry and port We have a whole bunch of innovation that kind of crossed over into almost being the whiskey drinker's rum. And so we wanted to kind of evolve it because that brand's doing very well. It's well accepted. But we wanted to do something that was sat beside that business, but was not commingled with the business. So there's a whole team that came out of Green River and Makers and Beam and Angel's Envy that works out of Kentucky, that it works on the whiskey. There's our Florida team that works on the rum, and then there's a few people who straddle it, and then there's the infrastructure in the middle, like our giant Hemingway Social Club, which is the group of people that are Hemingway enthusiasts that like both. And so anyway, we try to keep it separate, but they are sort of genetically tied, in certain ways.
Gotcha. So speaking of genetics, do you have to have 6 toes or fingers to be part of the Hemingway Society?
So the great stories are things like when Patrick Hemingway said, "We never had 6-toed cats. That was the neighbor," and he said, "My father got in trouble for actually trying to shoot cats in Key West." And I'm like, all right, these are great stories.
Oh man. Yeah. So for people out there listening that don't know, because I've been in Key West, it's been 30 years, but we used to take family trips, vacations down there. I went on spring break down there 2 different times. So I've been there like 5 or 6 different times and absolutely loved it. But yeah, the Hemingway, the story is the 6-toed cats, and they're still there. They roam around. But there are 6-toed, the polydactyls, and they call them the Hemingway cats. So that's, right. Yeah. So people out there that don't know that story of the Hemingway cats, there you go. So now you guys with the rum production, now you talked about Lakeland, Florida. Is that where the facility is? But you also have a place in Key West. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a fully functioning distillery and experience center down there.
Okay.
We have tasting rooms, and we get probably 150,000 people that come through that a year, but the bulk of the production. The national production, the international production is done by Ron in Lakeland, just to kind of theoretically keep it out of Hurricane Alley. But
I got you.
That's a moving target these days.
Yeah, no doubt about it. My daughter just moved to Tampa in April, and then 2 months later, the hurricane came through there. So that was quite an experience for her to go through that. So Ron, let's talk about the rum just a little bit, because I'm still kind of curious about this, and I know we're talking about the rye, but can you just talk about how that process works? You guys, are you sourcing barrels? Are you guys distilling your own rum down there, or how's that work?
We distill in Key West, and we use Key West rum along with rums that I bring in from various sources. And we blend here, and we're blending, processing, and bottling. So, okay,
and you're finishing those rums as well, correct?
Oh yes. Yeah, that's a lot of fun finishing. So,
yeah, and that seems to be the way things are going with everything: bourbon, rye, rum, tequila. I mean, everything. Everybody's finishing, and it seems to create some really interesting results. But I think if I was going to be doing that, I think I'd want to be in Key West, because I think it's a really fun place.
Yeah, most people enjoy Key West more than here. So.
Dad likes to say all the work gets done in Lakeland. All the fun happens down in the Keys, I think.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, like I said, it's been a long 30 years since I've been down there, but my memory serves me correctly. It seems like that's usually a pretty fun place to be.
But being here in Lakeland and sourcing all these rums and using all these casks we use, and this Olorosa sherry cask is one of the most, we've had great success with it. And that's why we chose to finish the rye in this particular cask. It's a great character. It's very successful with one of our rums. So that's why we picked that one.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, that makes sense. Well, guys, we're at the end of round 2, so it's probably a good place to take a break, get a word from our sponsors, and then we'll come back for round 3 with Steve Groth, the founder, and Ron and Jacob Call, the master distillers with Hemingway Whiskey, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. I'm still here, and hey, guess who else is still here? My good friend, Matt, sitting out there by the fireplace. Matt, thanks for hanging around, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, Mark. I'm still here, man. I'm not going to leave you high and dry.
I appreciate that, because, we don't have to do tasting notes this round. So, you know what, Matt, you probably could have just gone ahead and no, I'm just kidding.
No,
I don't want you to
come
do
on.
that.
I'm not going to phone it in. Are you kidding me?
It wouldn't be the same without you here, Matt. Come on, man. I can't do this show by myself. I'm not that talented.
You're beyond that talented.
Well, thanks. I appreciate your enthusiasm, man. Tell everybody who we have with us tonight, if you would.
Absolutely. Let's close out the final conclusion here.
We're the fighting Hemingway Rye fans.
That's right. And we've got the crew from Hemingway with us. We've got Steve Groth, the founder, and Ron and Jacob Call, the master distillers from Hemingway Whiskey. We are drinking the Hemingway Rye. And gentlemen, welcome back for round 3.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for sticking it out and staying with us. We appreciate that very much. So, it's funny because, we usually drink a few different expressions. I know this is your first expression, so we're happy to do that. So, we usually go into a different expression each round and talk about it. So we have managed to do what we can to talk about the palate and the nose and everything. So I'm off my game a little bit tonight, guys, because it's a different structure. So you'll just have to bear with me and hopefully I'll be able to get through this. But, Jacob, you've had a lot going on over the last few months, man. So, and we, it's fun because we have our Bourbon Life crew. There's a group of us that get together and we talk about things. And when the different news stories come out, we always like to speculate. Well, what's going on? What's happening here? What's going on? What's it? But now we've got you here, so you've got some exciting news. So tell us about the new distillery and everything that's going on with that.
Yeah. So back in November, just last month, we broke ground on our new Western Kentucky Distilling Company. It's in Ohio County. It's actually the first legal distillery in Ohio County. It's about 30 minutes outside of Owensboro, so I didn't have to move. So that's a big plus.
Yeah, nice.
But it's a 100% Kentucky-owned distillery. We use 100% Kentucky corn. All of our equipment we're buying from Kentucky, Vendome, and even our fermenters out of Kentucky. So, that's a big theme for us. Is we're all about Kentucky at the Western Kentucky Distilling Company.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it's in Beaver Dam, is that right?
Yeah, it's in Beaver Dam. We'll do 50,000 barrels a year. So we're a mid-sized distillery, probably around the size of say Wilderness Trail, a little bit smaller than those guys. We're hope to be in production May of 2023. So right around the corner.
So I was going to say, so you just broke ground in November and you're looking to start up in May.
Yeah.
That's fast.
Yeah. We've got the steel beams went up today. We started, the beams went up today. We got all the concrete down. So we're moving right along.
Okay. So talking about the Hemingway Rye, so let's tie that into the Western Kentucky Distilling. And Steve had mentioned this, I think earlier, that the goal right now, you guys are 94 of Indiana Rye, you're 6% of what you were laying down at Green River. So the goal is to increase your percentage to the point, I'm assuming that it will be then 100% produced there at Western Kentucky Distilling. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. That's, we'll make a lot of bourbon rye. It's a good sized distillery. So we'll make a lot of barrels for other brand owners and People
Okay.
like that, but a good chunk of our production, will be reserved for Hemingway.
Okay. So you guys will be doing some contract distilling as well then, I'm
Absolutely.
assuming?
Yeah.
All right. Now, will there be brands from Western Kentucky Distilling itself? Will you have your own?
Yeah, we've got down the road, we've got plans for some of our own
Okay.
brands. Got to let it age first,
Right.
4 or 5 years down the road. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And Jacob, one of the things is that, I mean, we know who you are, and Matt, obviously we've had you on the show and we've tasted the stuff that you've produced. And Green River, a lot of people maybe aren't familiar with Green River or hadn't heard of Green River, or the products, because Green River just came up with their very first product earlier this year. But there were a lot of other brands that you were actually distilling. So, and it's kind of weird to say it, but you're probably the best master distiller. The products that you make that I've tasted, that a lot of people probably haven't heard of or don't know about, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, and like Steve talked about earlier in terms of rock stars and guys that are doing some great stuff, because Matt and I both agree with what you've produced and what you've made in the past has been great. The things that we've tasted from you have been great, but a lot of it's been for other brands and other names, and people don't necessarily know to associate Jacob Call with what you've done with those brands necessarily.
well, I really appreciate you guys saying that. Sometimes, we stay behind the curtain a little bit, but
Right.
in Green River, I guess was my big coming out party, with that brand. And it did quite well. Got a lot of awards and a lot of good recognition and press. And Terry Bradshaw's brand was great. And Wheel Horse and some of those other. Alan Jackson, did his latest one. So, I was really excited. I kind of have always had that entrepreneurial spirit, and really wanted to go out on my own with some really good friends of mine to build my own distillery and do my own thing, and super excited to get to do that. And also, hey, along the way, I'm going to get to do this really cool Hemingway Rye whiskey brand with my dad and my brother and Steve.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I got a lot going on, but it's all fun. The good part now is I get to do what I want to do. So
Yeah. Well, and that's cool. And that seems to be kind of a trend now in the industry. We see a lot of people leaving their brands, the places they've been. Some big names recently that have moved on and doing their own thing, and other people that are moved on that are still yet to do something, or we're waiting to see what comes out from them. But yeah, man, we it was like I said, we speculated on the show. We're like, man, Jacob's left Green River. Where's he going? What's he gonna do? So when the announcement came out about Western Kentucky, we were all really happy to see that, man. So I think it's a great opportunity. It sounds like it is for you. And get to work with your dad and Steve, obviously, with the background that they both have with this Hemingway Rye. It just sounds like a great opportunity.
yeah, we're super excited, and Steve with his background, with Angel's Envy, and we're already working on he's got some really cool ideas with a Hemingway experience at the Western Kentucky Distillery. So. We got a lot to look forward to. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, Steve, you'd mentioned earlier working with the Hemingway family, working with his son as well. You talked about the conservation, and I know that's a big thing. With the Papa's Pilar, the rum, the things that you guys have done there. So, and you mentioned it also with this brand. So, I'm assuming that conservation and things are going to be very important to the Hemingway Whiskey Company. Can you kind of elaborate on that? What all is involved with that? What efforts that the Hemingway family is involved with that you guys will be participating with them?
Sure. Yeah, we in the rum we do probably 175 events a year that are focused towards conservation efforts, whether it's water conservation, Everglades restoration, ocean reef restoration, things like that. And so we're at the epicenter of a lot of that, and have been there for a decade. But as part of it, of the overall Hemingway Halo, which is the Old Man and the Sea brands, which is the holding company above both Papa's Pilar and Hemingway Rye, we'll just double down. Last year we spent $1 million out of Pilar on conservation efforts. The Hemingways have, the reason why they did the brand was to give money to conservation literacy. So for the whiskey, it's funny because whiskey, people that hunt, people that hunt fish, so they're not like completely separate individuals, but things that are important to them, like access to clean water, clean rivers, access to open spaces, things like that. Those are all going to be things that we've already done over the last decade, but we'll continue to do and double down. The whiskey lends itself more towards kind of a campfire, outdoor, area. The rum is more kind of a, ocean type of atmosphere, but that's we'll just continue the effort. That's really the DNA of our entire company. That's why we started this and didn't just move on and just weren't one and done with Angel's Envy. This was really what connected us to the Hemingways, and the Hemingways are very immersed in our business and our brand, and they have a lot of efforts that they're involved in, and we support, and vice versa.
No, that's really cool. So I know with the rum brand and things, I mean, in Hemingway, the family, that conservation efforts, you're looking there in Florida. So with this new brand and everything going on here in Kentucky, you think they'll focus some here in Kentucky with efforts to do things, or will it still be the focusing more in Florida and the conservation down there?
Yeah, Florida probably gets the most press, but frankly, even in the rum, we're pretty much global in the things that we work on.
Okay, all right.
But for sure, Hemingway Whiskey's home is going to be Kentucky, so we'll focus on home first, and then work out from there.
Yeah, very cool. So now, Ron, does that mean are you going to be moving to Kentucky and moving in with Jacob and just living with him and working at the distillery up here?
Maybe I should, but I probably won't. But, like Steve was talking about, I'm sitting here thinking, there's such opportunities for the Hemingway and us as a family. I'm saying Steve is part of my family, so we can do. I'm thinking of white oak tree conservation.
Sure.
I'm thinking of growing Kentucky rye for Hemingway Rye. So I think there's quite a bit of opportunity for the Hemingways and this group to move into an area that most people don't think about. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dad. I didn't mention that. With our distillery, we have 81 acres, and it's an old farm. It's an old farmland, and part of our plans, we do have a little field in the back where we are going to grow rye for Hemingway whiskey right on site. So,
okay. Yeah, well, that'll be really cool, man. That'll be a lot of fun to be able to source grain, and you're going to have your corn coming from Kentucky already too, right?
All local.
Yeah,
all within probably 10 miles of us.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's really cool to see that. So, Ron, we expect to see you up here though, in Beaver Dam, Kentucky. So,
that's a nice area of the state. So I used to fish a lot up in there years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe I can go fishing again once in a while. So
there you go. Everybody needs to do that. I usually go down to Alabama and do my bass fishing, but everybody needs to.
You should come to Florida for that.
Well, yeah, that's true. I've heard that's obviously really good, nice big largemouth bass down there. So I need to go to Key West. I'm just saying.
We have a place for you for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to Marathon and do some tarpon fishing off the bridges down there.
You don't need to go off the bridges. I live in Duck Key, which is right next to Marathon.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm up to my eyeballs in boats and fishing captains, and we'll take good care of you.
There you go. That'd be great. It's been a long time. One of my favorite things about the Keys though was and I don't mean to get off topic, but I'm going to get off topic. If people haven't been down there, Key Largo and the John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park. It's such a beautiful place, and to be able to go out there, we used to go snorkeling all the time. Well, not all the time, but we were down there. So it's a beautiful, beautiful area. If people haven't been down through there, you got to go experience that, so, for sure. So very, very nice. So guys, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the brands itself, the Hemingway Rye, what that looks like. We mentioned it a little bit earlier. You got the first edition that came out, and obviously you've mentioned you're going to have an edition that's going to come out that won't be quite as, I guess, hard to find, maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Who wants to talk about that?
We're calling it our classics release, and it should be. We want to have a product that you can find every day, and then orbit around it, and a lot of pretty special releases, not the limited editions that people have on sale for 6 months and they never seem to sell out of them. But it's intentionally meandering a little bit, because the product roadmap is pretty much dictated by the three of us, and probably my son, who's probably the smartest of the whole crew anyway. But it's really, we're trying to leave it a bit flexible. And to be able to kind of make, find something that we really fall in love with, and then get, let it loose on the public. And that's really been this kind of open source innovation is what we've done with our rum, and we like it. And we bring in, master sommeliers, we bring in master distillers, we try a whole bunch of different stuff, and a lot of it we don't like. But then there's the ones that just jump out and grab you by the throat and say, let's just see if everybody else likes it as much as us. But we don't really want to have that. We don't have like a plan that looks like the schematic from the engine room of an aircraft carrier for our product roadmap. It's really simple, and make good products. Real products made by real people in a real place is really what we say, internally, and then. Let's just find things we like, and then hope everybody else likes it, or somebody else likes it.
Sure, that makes sense. So Jacob, will the focus then with Hemingway whiskey, will it be the focus be on rye? You'll kind of focus on that, or will you branch out with?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have a hard time probably putting the bourbon in those typewriter keys all the way across the bottle. But we're gonna stick to rye for a little while, but you never know down the road. We do have the whole library book collection, of different things and different finishes. So don't know, too early to say. And that's the really cool and fun thing is, we're a small group, small team. We're not a big corporate company that another group that says, oh, we've got to come out with 16 innovations over the next 5 years. Nah, we're just going to do what's fun.
Yeah. Well, and so I was going to ask you that as Steve was talking, kind of that created a question for me with regard to what you're doing. I mean, leaving Green River, coming to Kentucky, Western Kentucky Distilling, and working with Hemingway Rye and brands like that. I mean, it seems like it may give you the opportunity to be a little more experimental. You can kind of, you don't have that corporate that structure, people saying you've got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. I mean, there's got to be some level of appeal to you for that. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah. Even at the old place, I had probably 20 different mash bills, different recipes that I ran for different people. So, a lot of good experience making a lot of different things. But, with my dad, he is really in the catbird seat down there with all of his rum finishing. I mean, he's been doing rum finishing before the bourbon guys even thought about doing, finishing. So he's got all kinds of experiments going on, and all kinds of weird barrels. So there's no telling what he's going to come up with.
Don't tell Steve that, okay?
So let me ask you that with regard to the finishing, where does that take place? Is that taking place here in Kentucky, or are you doing things down in Florida with what you produced here in Kentucky, or how does that work?
Go ahead, Dad. You can take that.
Well, the rye was sourced and sampled and approved here.
Okay.
Uh, then the finishing process is here also.
Okay.
But we can also finish small batches in the Key West if necessary. And, we're not limited just to Oloroso sherry. There's PX Spanish sherry barrels we can use. Our mind's pretty open. And
Yeah.
Steve is smiling, so that's a good sign.
It's funny because I tell people when I go into the lab, it's if I'm there for a half an hour, I need an Uber. If I'm there for an hour, I need an ambulance. But yeah, there's we'll probably bottle and finish in Kentucky. We'll bottle and finish in Lakeland. We don't really have a firm rule on it. Just whatever the easiest and best for the project.
Yeah,
But Ron's humble. He's got more stuff sitting in barrels, all over the distillery, and some of it's just and he's got probably 20 bullets in the chamber for the next 3 years, and he just feeds it to me a couple at a time when I come down there. So anyway, it's fun to watch. It's really it's fun to watch these guys, these geniuses, go to work.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, well, guys, we're at the end of round 3, actually. Not kind of. We're there. So, Matt, let's get final thoughts on the Hemingway Rye first edition. What do you think?
I'm loving it. It's got a lot of texture, a lot of structure. You could sit here and talk about complexities and all the flavors, tastes, and aromas, but it's just really good. It drinks spicy. It's got a sweetness to it, a nice finish. It's just a good drinking rye that's meant to be drank.
Yeah. So all you people out there listening that bought bottles, just don't sit on them. Open them up and drink them. And if you're gonna sit on them, just send them to me because I'll open it.
Yeah, we'll hold them for you.
We'll hold them for you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take care of you guys. That's for sure.
I'm telling you what, man, something else. Hopefully, people will crack them and enjoy it. But I'm not lying. I had 3 or 4 different people when I said I was going to have you guys on the show that were like, "Hey, have you tried that Hemingway Rye yet?" I'm like, "No, I've got a sample bottle. I'm saving it until the show." But everybody I talked to was just a big fan of what you guys have done, and these people that are in the industry that I really respect. And they were big fans. So you guys have really done a great job on this first edition. If this is a marker for where the brand Hemingway Rye is going to go, then I'm all about it and excited to see what comes next for sure.
That's so cool. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So guys, before we wrap it up, any final thoughts, things you want to share about the brand? Jacob, you can talk about Hemingway. You can talk about Western Kentucky Distilling. Anything guys want to share though before we get out of here?
No, just a super fun project. Once you see the packaging, I don't know who came up with this idea, probably Steve, but it's got a little old school library card on the back label that you can, you can pull that out. And it's meant to be shared, right? So it's meant to be shared. And, I think my brother came up with the tagline, "Pour your story." So it's made to be shared and stories told, and that's what we're all about.
Very, very nice. Ron, how about you? Anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, this is a great project, and Steve hadn't mentioned his 2 boys, but it's great with it's kind of like a father-son venture, and
very nice.
I think it's just great for everyone. It's unusual to have a team like us together. With Steve and his sons are great on marketing. My boys on production, I hope, and then I think it's only thing I want to do is kidnap one of those 6-toed cats and bring it to Kentucky.
Yeah,
I'll be down in Key West in 2 weeks. I'll bring you one back.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Steve's
We're gonna have a cat house in Beaver Dam.
Everybody needs. You're going to have a good mouser in your rick house.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
you might as well.
We got to have a good distillery cat. So those
That's
mice,
right. Get you one.
a
Get you a
chance.
polydactyl.
Yeah.
Got those 6 toes, man. That's what you need for sure. Steve, how about you? Before we wrap it up.
No, this is the stuff I live for. I mean, I've had the privilege of having a decent career and done things in the past. And these are the type of projects that, that I get up for and love working with. These guys are fabulous. I try to not get in their way. And so that's my mission. Don't get in the way of the geniuses. So anyway, I love, this is where I geek out.
Very cool. Very nice. Well, guys, we really enjoyed it. Matt, final thoughts from you before we wrap it up?
Mark, I think you had said it best when this is any indication of where we're headed. I'm excited to see what you all pour your hearts out into next. This has been really great. I think the future is super bright.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
No doubt. I agree. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And we want to thank all of our listeners as well. Thank our sponsors, of course, everything they do for us. We appreciate all their support, all their help. We could not do what we do without their financial support. So thank them. We want to thank our listeners. Like I said, we appreciate everybody that listens to us, whatever time of day it is that you listen to us. We appreciate you guys out there. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram and on Facebook at The Bourbon Life. We would love to hear from you guys. Please feel free to send us a message, direct message, whatever you want to do. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. Matt and I would be happy to talk with you, listen to your ideas, suggestions, whatnot. If you want to leave us a review, you can do so. We would love that, only if it's a 5-star though. So, otherwise just don't worry about it. No, I'm just kidding. But we appreciate that. Guys, thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.